Unaware his wife was about to inherit a $300 million estate, husband forced her to serve his mother like a maid. What she did next will shock you. He didn't just disrespect her. He stood at the edge of his mother's spotless kitchen, arms folded, and watched as the woman who wore his ring knelt on the cold tile, scrubbing the floor like hired help, while his mother barked orders from a chair. That evening, Elena Turner's hands were red and raw from cleaning. Ruth, her mother-in-law, pushed a bucket toward her with her foot and said, "On your knees. If you want to stay in this family, earn your place." Mark said nothing. He only added, "Just do it, Elena. You're not working. At least be useful." What he didn't know was this. Not long after he let her drop to that floor, Elena would sit in a quiet office across from a lawyer and hear words that changed everything. Her grandfather, Henry Montgomery, the distant man everyone said had nothing left but old land, had left her an estate worth far more than Mark could ever earn in his lifetime. $300 million, in her name alone. But instead of walking out the same day she learned the truth, Elena walked back into the house that treated her like a maid and started watching, listening, recording. She saw the strange woman at the car. She heard the whispers in the backyard. She caught the line that changed everything. "Once your mom signs the house over, we're kicking Elena out. She's in the way." He thought she was powerless. He thought she would cry and obey forever. He thought no one would ever believe her side of the story. He had no idea that the maid he was breaking was already the legal heir to a fortune big enough to decide his future, his home, and his public downfall. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it's like letting Elena's voice be drowned out by the people who used her. When you click that button, you stand with every quiet soul planning their comeback. Please subscribe now, and in the comments, tell me where you're watching from. The metal hanger slipped out of Elena's hand and struck the hardwood floor with a sharp, ringing crack, loud enough to break the stillness of the room like a warning shot. Her heart jolted. For a moment she stood frozen, breath held, eyes wide. She wasn't afraid of the noise, but she had lived long enough beside people who disliked surprises. So she trained herself to move gently, to never cause a stir. Elena Turner, 28, stood surrounded by her husband's neatly folded clothes. She arranged Mark's wardrobe with the precision of someone who believed care could hold a home together. Shirts organized by color, pants ironed until they formed perfect lines, patterns grouped in the order Mark preferred. She did all this quietly, willingly, because Elena believed love was something you protected through devotion. Elena grew up thinking gentleness was a strength. She learned it from the only man who ever gave her something without expecting anything in return. A soft memory opened like a curtain. She was 9 years old again, standing inside her grandfather's vast study. The room smelled of old wood, polished leather, and afternoon sun drifting through tall windows. Her grandfather, Henry Montgomery, known by the world as a wealthy private businessman, stood at his desk looking at her with an unreadable expression. He wasn't warm, not exactly, but he wasn't cold either. His affection was hidden behind silence, behind old habits and old wounds. He had survived losses, betrayals, and a lifetime of building something he never fully shared. But he shared one thing with her. He handed Elena a wooden box, heavy, smooth, beautifully carved with the initials HM. "Keep this safe," he told her, voice low and steady. "One day it will matter." Inside, she found a letter and a thin ribbon. Nothing more, no explanation. Child Elena had hugged the box close anyway. Adult Elena still kept it in her nightstand, untouched but never forgotten. The flashback faded. Now 28, married to Mark Turner, living in a house that felt too quiet, Elena still protected that wooden box. She didn't know why. She didn't think it was worth much. But she remembered the weight in her grandfather's voice. And though she didn't know it yet, the box was the first doorway to a $300 million inheritance that waited silently in her future. She pressed a blue shirt to her lap and examined a small tear along the seam. Without hesitation, she threaded a needle and stitched it back together, steady hands moving with practiced grace. She grew up repairing things, clothes, broken furniture, fractured relationships. She believed if she fixed enough small things, bigger problems would fade on their own. As she trimmed the thread, Mark's phone buzzed on the bed beside her. The screen lit up. One line, one name. See you tonight. Don't let her find out. Danielle. Elena blinked. The name meant nothing to her. Danielle who? A colleague? A friend? Her fingers hovered over the phone before she picked it up carefully, almost gingerly, as if it might burn her. She wasn't someone who snooped. She didn't believe in suspicion. She believed in asking, in trusting, in giving space. Still, her heart squeezed. Mark entered the room a minute later. Mark Turner, 32, her husband of 4 years. Charming when he wanted to be, distant when he felt pressured, raised by a mother who made sure he never had to lift a finger. He worked in management, expected order, and assumed respect was something handed to him freely. Elena had once loved him for his confidence. Now sometimes it felt more like control. "You fixed my shirt?" he asked, tone flat, almost bored. "Yes," she said softly. He took it without thanks, without looking at her work. His eyes drifted to his phone instead. Elena handed it to him. "Someone messaged you." Mark glanced at the screen, dismissive. "Work stuff. Don't worry about it." He slipped the phone into his pocket and walked away, leaving the blue shirt tossed carelessly over a chair. Not even hung. Elena stared at it for a moment. Something inside her, some quiet part of her that she always pushed down, stirred again. Her eyes drifted toward the nightstand drawer. The wooden box sat inside, untouched yet strangely heavy in her memory today. She didn't open it. She just stood there, the faint feeling that something old, something important, something connected to her grandfather, was about to return. Elena never imagined that the box she kept hidden would one day collide with the life she was trying so hard to hold together. Downstairs, the sharp slam of the front door echoed through the house, sudden and jarring. Someone had walked in without knocking, and Elena was about to find out who. The front door blasted open with a violent slam, so sudden that Elena nearly dropped the tray of fresh towels in her hands. The sound shot through the house like an alarm. Her pulse jumped, eyes wide, breath caught. Before she could speak, a sharp voice cut through the hallway. "Mark, where are you? Why is this door never locked?" Ruth Turner had arrived. Ruth, Mark's mother, 70 but proud, sharp-tongued and dressed like someone who believed every room belonged to her. She stepped inside as if she owned the house, her expression already set in disapproval. Her eyes brushed over Elena for half a second, cold, measuring, unimpressed. No hello, no smile, no warmth, just judgment. Elena forced a small smile. "Good morning, Ruth. I wasn't expecting—" "I can see that," Ruth interrupted, brushing past her. "The entryway looks lived in, too lived in." Her gaze landed on Elena's simple dress, then on the towels in her hands. "Still dressing plain, I see," Ruth said. "I suppose some habits never change." Ruth believed standards were everything, and in her eyes, Elena came from a world with far too little of them. Elena held the towels closer to her chest. "Would you like something to drink?" Ruth's eyes narrowed. "Tea, and make it strong. I had a long morning." Without waiting for an answer, she walked into the living room like someone surveying her property. Mark came downstairs seconds later. He kissed his mother on the cheek. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I came to check on things. I have to make sure my son's home is in order." Ruth glanced toward Elena again. "Especially now." Elena pretended not to hear the last line, but it stuck to her chest like a weight. She carried the towels back to the bedroom, heart sinking. She didn't like tension. She didn't like conflict. She always tried to make things easier for everyone. She set the towels down and paused as a memory surfaced. A flashback, 2 years earlier. Mark had taken her hand gently, smiling softly. "Just give my mom time," he told her. "She's old-fashioned. She'll warm up to you once she sees how much you care." Elena had trusted those words. She had believed them. She had entered this family hoping to build a peaceful, loving home. But Ruth never warmed. She only froze harder. The flashback faded. Now Elena walked to the kitchen to prepare the tea Ruth demanded. As she boiled water, she heard whispers from the living room. Ruth's voice, low, sharp, cutting. "She's not good enough for this family, Mark. I told you that from the start. You married beneath yourself. Elena froze completely. Mark's voice came next. Soft, tired, but not defending her. Not once. Just keep your voice down, Mom. That girl, Ruth continued, has no class, no background, no worth. You could have chosen better. The words sliced through Elena's chest. She stood silent, hands shaking. The kettle hissed loudly behind her, but she didn't hear it. She swallowed hard, picking up the cup with trembling fingers. She forced herself to keep moving. That was what she always did. Keep moving. Keep calm. Keep loving. She carried the tea tray into the dining room, carefully balancing each cup. But as she walked past the kitchen window, something outside caught her eye. A woman, standing near Mark's car in a slim-fitted dress. Long hair falling over her shoulders. Beautiful, confident, familiar in a way that made Elena's stomach twist before she even understood why. The woman lifted her hand casually, brushing something off Mark's collar. Mark stood close to her, too close. Elena's steps slowed. The tray wobbled in her hands. The woman laughed softly and leaned forward. Before Elena could breathe, the woman pressed a small kiss against Mark's cheek. Quick, hidden, intimate. Elena stopped completely. The tea tray rattled. Her fingers tightened so hard around the handle she thought it might break. She didn't know who the woman was. She didn't know why Mark was meeting her. She didn't understand why her heart suddenly felt like it was sinking inside her chest. But she knew one thing. Ruth hadn't been lying when she said Elena wasn't enough for Mark. Mark had already replaced her. He just hadn't told her yet. Elena swallowed the pain and forced herself to walk into the living room, where Ruth sat waiting. She placed the tea in front of her mother-in-law with steady hands, though inside she was anything but steady. Ruth raised her cup, sniffed it, and frowned. "You steeped it too long." Elena said nothing, because outside, through the window behind Ruth, she could still see the woman walking away. Elena didn't know the woman's name, but soon she would learn it, and nothing in her life would ever be the same again. A car door shut outside, a quiet signal, a quiet beginning, a quiet crack that would soon break her world wide open. The next afternoon, the harsh scrape of a metal bucket against the floor cut through the house like a blade. Elena flinched as Ruth pushed it toward her with the tip of her shoe. "Scrub the kitchen," Ruth ordered. "On your knees, it's filthy." The floor wasn't filthy. Elena had cleaned it that morning. But she lowered herself anyway, hands trembling as they touched the cold tile. The bucket was filled with strong cleaning solution. So strong, it stung her eyes. Intensity hung in the air like thick smoke. Ruth crossed her arms, chin raised with satisfaction. "You should be grateful I'm teaching you how a proper wife behaves. Mark deserves a woman who can maintain a home." Mark stood near the doorway, watching, not speaking, not defending her. Elena looked up at him, hoping for something, anything to stop this. Instead, he sighed impatiently. "Just do it, Elena. Mom's right. You're not working. At least earn your keep." The words struck her like a blow she didn't see coming. This was how her silence began to hurt her, not because she lacked strength, but because she loved too much to believe people could be cruel. Elena dipped the rag into the bucket and scrubbed. Hard. Her palms burned. Her knees pressed into the tile. Ruth watched her like a queen watching a servant. Minutes passed. Elena's breath grew faint. Then Ruth lifted her foot and placed it in front of Elena's face. "Massage my feet when you're done." Elena froze. Mark didn't blink. She used to believe marriage was partnership. She used to believe Mark chose her for love. She used to believe their life would be peaceful. But here she was, scrubbing floors while her husband's mother ordered her around like she was invisible. And Mark allowed it. Her chest tightened as another memory surfaced, pulling her back. A flashback. A small studio apartment. Warm light. Elena sitting at a desk with brochures spread before her. An offer for a new job she was excited about. A chance to grow, to earn, to contribute. Mark standing behind her, gently kissing her cheek. "You don't need to work anymore," he had said. "Let me take care of us. You deserve to rest. I want you home. With me." His voice back then was warm. So warm that she had believed every word. So warm that she quit the job she had worked hard to get. And now she was scrubbing floors while Mark watched her kneel. The flashback faded. The pain stayed. Hours slipped by. Elena completed every chore Ruth threw at her. Laundry, cooking, scrubbing baseboards, cleaning windows, running errands that Ruth could have done herself. Elena moved through the day like a ghost, quiet and obedient, until late afternoon when a knock sounded at the front door. A soft, familiar knock she recognized instantly. Mark rushed ahead of her to open it. Elena paused in the hallway, hidden halfway behind the wall. The door opened, and there she was, Danielle, the woman from outside, the same woman Elena had seen kiss Mark yesterday, tall, beautiful, confident, wearing a fitted blouse and holding a folder of neatly arranged papers. "Hi," Danielle said in a low voice, meant only for Mark. "I brought the documents." Her tone was too warm, too close. Mark opened the door wider, letting her inside. He didn't even check to see if Elena was nearby. Danielle stepped in, handing the folder to Mark. "It's the property listing. The place is perfect for us, but—" She leaned in, lowering her voice. "We just need your mom to sign her place over first." Elena's breath caught. Her heart pounded so loudly she feared someone would hear it. "For us? Place? Need your mom to sign?" Mark stiffened and immediately led Danielle farther into the house, away from the doorway and Elena's direct line of sight. "Elena can't hear this," he muttered. Elena pressed her back against the wall, trying to breathe. Her hands trembled against her apron. She wasn't imagining anything. This woman, Danielle, wasn't some co-worker. She wasn't a friend. She wasn't someone passing by. She was part of something deeper, something secret, something dangerous, something Mark was hiding from her. Minutes later, the murmur of their voices faded. Caroling laughter, soft footsteps. Elena stepped outside into the backyard, then around to the side of the house, trying to steady herself with fresh air. But as she passed the living room window, she froze, because through a small gap in the curtains, a face stared back at her. Danielle, smirking, watching her, enjoying her pain. Their eyes locked for a split second. Danielle's smile widened, taunting, cruel, confident. Elena staggered back, breath stolen from her lungs. Her knees trembled, because in that moment she understood. Danielle wasn't going away. She was moving closer, and Elena was being pushed out piece by piece. What Elena didn't know was that far from this house, someone was pulling her name from an old file and dialing her number, carrying a truth she never expected. Somewhere else, a phone began to ring, and soon that call would reach her. The glass shattered before Elena even realized it had slipped from her hand. A sharp crack exploded across the kitchen as pieces scattered at her feet. Her body froze. Her heart slammed. Her breath caught in her chest. The house was full tonight. Voices, laughter, footsteps, music. Mark was hosting a gathering for a few friends from work, something he always enjoyed, something he never prepared for, something he always expected her to handle alone. She knelt quickly, picking up the shards, fighting the sting in her eyes and the sting in her fingers. She could already hear Ruth's voice rising from the dining room. "Elena, stop making noise. We have guests." Elena swallowed hard and whispered, "I'm sorry," even though Ruth hadn't come into the kitchen to hear it. She apologized for things that weren't her fault, because that is what quiet hearts learn to do. Elena stood, cleaned her hands, and forced herself to keep moving. The food wasn't going to serve itself. Under Ruth's direct command, Elena carried trays of appetizers and placed them carefully around the living room. She tried to smile politely, but tension wrapped around her chest like a tight rope. Mark was in the center of the room, charming, confident, laughing with his friends. They liked him. He knew how to make people feel comfortable, but he didn't even look at Elena, not once. And then she appeared, Danielle. Dressed in a sleek black dress, perfectly styled, wearing a scent Elena had never smelled before. Sweet, expensive, impossible to ignore. Her hair was curled, her lips painted a bold red. She fit into the room as if she belonged there, as if she had been invited long before Elena even knew the gathering was happening. Danielle leaned close to Mark, her hand brushing his arm casually, too casually. Elena's stomach twisted, because this time Danielle wasn't sneaking around. She wasn't whispering at the door. She wasn't hiding behind curtains. She was here, openly, with Mark. Elena forced herself to look away, carrying more trays to the table. The friend group noticed her. One of the men nudged Mark and chuckled loudly. "Man, Mark, your wife is practically your maid now." The room erupted in light laughter. Elena froze, fingers tightening around the tray. And Mark, her husband, laughed too. Not awkwardly, not politely, but naturally, like the joke made sense. Danielle tilted her head and added smoothly, "Well, some people are just better at chores." More laughter, another small cut, another quiet wound. Elena felt something inside her chest crack, not loudly, not violently, but deeply, a slow break only she could feel. She set the tray down carefully to avoid dropping it again. Her eyes stung, her throat tightened, but she didn't let tears fall. She refused to cry in front of them. She forced a small smile and walked back to the kitchen, each step heavier than the last. Inside the kitchen, the noise from the living room muffled. Her breathing steadied. Her hands shook. She gripped the counter to steady herself. Her mind drifted, slipping into a memory without warning. A flashback. She was 8 years old, standing beside her grandfather as he sat on the porch of his old estate. The sun lit his face just enough for her to see the wrinkles that held years of silence. He rested a hand on her shoulder, a rare moment of affection. "Elena," he had said quietly, "never let anyone decide your worth. People only see what their eyes allow, not what your soul carries." She had nodded then, not understanding fully, but those words returned now, echoing inside her. Her soul carried worth, love, patience, gentleness, strength. But Mark couldn't see any of it. Neither could Ruth. And Danielle, she saw Elena only as someone she could push aside. The flashback faded. The laughter from the other room grew louder again. Elena wiped her eyes, straightened her shoulders, and stepped back toward the doorway, ready to serve more food because she had no choice. But when she lifted her gaze, she stopped cold. Her face hardened slowly, painfully in a way it never had before. Because from the kitchen doorway, she saw something she couldn't unsee. Danielle was standing inches from Mark, far too close. Her hand rested on his chest. Mark didn't pull away. And worse, he smiled. Not the polite smile he gave strangers, not the awkward smile he gave coworkers. A genuine one. A smile he hadn't given Elena in a long time. Elena's breath caught. Her heart pounded. Her fingers curled around the doorway. For the first time in her marriage, her expression shifted into something sharp, something new, something that did not belong to a quiet, gentle heart. Her eyes hardened. In that moment, something inside Elena stopped breaking and started waking. She stepped back into the shadow of the hallway, pulse racing, because deep in her chest, beneath the hurt, beneath the humiliation, a question formed. What was Mark planning? And why did Danielle seem so confident she belonged here? Just as she tried to steady herself, a sudden vibration buzzed against her hip. Her phone. Ringtone silenced, but the call insistent. A number she didn't recognize flashed on the screen. And this time, she would answer. The next afternoon, the phone buzzed so violently in Elena's pocket that it nearly slipped from her hand. The vibration shot through her like a jolt. Sharp, unexpected, urgent. For a second, she thought it was Mark. Maybe another order. Maybe another cold message telling her what to do or where to stand. But when she pulled the phone out, the screen flashed an unknown number. Her heartbeat stumbled. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" A calm, professional voice responded. "Good afternoon. May I speak with Elena Turner? This is Attorney Douglas Cartwright. I need to meet with you regarding a private matter involving your late grandfather, Henry Montgomery." Elena's breath hitched. "Grandfather? I'm sorry, but why would a lawyer call me? I haven't spoken to him in years." "I understand," the lawyer said gently, "but this matter concerns you directly. I'm calling using the contact details he left on file. It's important we meet as soon as possible." Her fingers tightened around the phone. Her mind spun. Elena carried old family wounds quietly. She had grown up between parents who kept their distance from her grandfather, leaving her caught in years of silence she never understood. And now a lawyer was calling her? About him? "What is this about?" she whispered. The lawyer replied, "It's about property matters, something he left behind. You were named personally." "Property?" Elena blinked. Her grandfather had owned land. Yes, but the family always said it was worthless. Leftover space he never sold. Nothing important? A memory surfaced in a soft flashback. Her mother pacing the kitchen years ago, saying, "Your grandfather chose business over family. We don't need anything from him." Her father adding, "That land he sits on is nothing but empty acres and old buildings. Forget it, Elena." She had believed them. She had grown up thinking she was forgotten, that nothing of value connected her to that side of the family. Yet now, a lawyer was calling her. She swallowed. "Okay," she said slowly. I can meet. "Tomorrow morning," the lawyer replied. "I'll text you the address of my office. Please don't discuss this with anyone yet. It's private." Private. The word echoed in her chest. After the call ended, she stepped outside onto the front path for air. The house felt too tight. Her head spun. Her hands shook. Her heart was unsure whether to race or rest. But then, another sound. A car door slammed. She looked toward the driveway. Danielle stepped out of Mark's car. Not out of a taxi, not from a friend's ride, out of Mark's car. Danielle adjusted her dress, smoothing the fabric over her hips, then looked up slowly and locked eyes with Elena. The smirk came instantly, cold, sharp, intentional. "Oh," Danielle said lightly, brushing her hair back. "He's busy today. Better not bother him too much." Elena's stomach nodded. Busy? With who? With what? Why was Danielle in Mark's car? Why was she adjusting her dress like she had just been somewhere she shouldn't? Why was she so bold, so confident, so comfortable? Elena's voice caught in her throat. She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Danielle walked past her with a swing in her step, as if she owned the driveway, the house, the man inside. And for the first time, Elena felt something she never let herself feel. Fear, not for her marriage, but for herself, and for the truth she sensed hiding behind every smile Mark had given her these last years. Elena didn't know yet, but the lawyer's call was only the beginning. Something far bigger than old land was waiting for her. Danielle disappeared into the house. Elena remained frozen on the path, heart hammering, because now, finally, she sensed danger, and tomorrow morning, the truth would begin to surface. The door of the law office slammed shut behind Elena with a force that made her jump. The sound echoed through the hallway like a final warning, like the world was closing her inside something she couldn't undo. It was the next morning, after Danielle's smirk, after the car door slam, after a night of almost no sleep. Her heart pounded as she stood in front of a tall wooden door marked Attorney Douglas Cartwright. This was real. This meeting was real, and she wasn't ready, but she pushed the door open anyway. Inside sat a man in his late 50s, Douglas Cartwright, the lawyer who had called her. He had gray hair, a calm expression, and eyes that studied people with precision. Papers were neatly arranged on the table in front of him. "Elena Turner?" he asked gently. She nodded, stepping inside with careful steps, as if the floor might shift beneath her. "Please," he said, motioning toward a chair. "Sit." She sat slowly, fingers twisting together in her lap. The lawyer opened a thick folder. The sound of paper sliding felt heavy, like the beginning of something huge. "Elena," he began, "I'm here to inform you of your inheritance. Your grandfather, Henry Montgomery's estate." Her breath caught. My grandfather?" she whispered. "We haven't spoken in years. My parents—" "I'm aware," Cartwright replied, nodding. "Your parents had disagreements with him, but his relationship with you was different. You were the only person he mentioned in his final letter." He slid a sheet of paper toward her. Elena stared at the familiar handwriting, the same handwriting she saw on the letter inside the wooden box he had given her as a child. What is all this?" she asked, voice trembling. Cartwright folded his hands. "Elena, your grandfather did not only own land. That was only a small part. He quietly built multiple companies over the years. Real estate, logistics, investment holdings. Much of it was kept private. Very few people knew the true size of his wealth." She shook her head slowly. "He was rich?" Her voice cracked. She never imagined him that way. To her, he had always been the quiet man who read newspapers and watched sunsets. Cartwright continued, his voice steady. Upon his passing, his entire estate transfers to one person. He left a will. It has been probated. Everything is clear. He paused. Elena, everything, every asset, every share, every property has been left to you. Her breath caught again. Her chest tightened. I don't understand, she whispered. Cartwright looked her directly in the eye. Elena, your grandfather's estate is valued at approximately $300 million. Silence crashed over her like a tidal wave. 300 million? Her vision blurred for a second. Her hands gripped the arms of the chair as if she might fall. Elena had spent years believing she came from nothing, but her grandfather had seen something in her that no one else did. A memory rose, soft, warm, gentle. She was 10, kneeling on the ground beside her grandfather's garden. A small bird lay on the grass, wing injured, trembling in fear. Elena cupped it softly, trying not to scare it. Her grandfather stood behind her, watching. A gentle heart, he whispered, is rarer than gold. The flashback dissolved, leaving Elena blinking tears away. Cartwright added calmly, this inheritance belongs to you alone. Your grandfather named you specifically. You were not married when he wrote the will, and he placed the assets in a way that keeps them separate. Your husband has no legal access or claim. He cannot touch a single dollar. Those words hit her like a shockwave. Her husband, Mark, the man who forced her to scrub floors, the man who let his mother treat her like a servant, the man who laughed with another woman in their home, he had no claim to this, not a cent. Something inside her shifted, something deep, something silent, something new. Slowly, very slowly, her lips curved into a small smile. But it wasn't a smile of happiness. It wasn't relief. It wasn't gratitude. It was the quiet rise of strength, a strength she didn't know she had. Cartwright watched her carefully. There will be more to discuss, he said. Taxes, transfers, accounts. We'll handle all of that step by step. But I need to ask something else. And you don't have to answer if you're not ready. She looked up, eyes shining with unshed tears. Is your home life safe, Mrs. Turner? The question cut straight through her. Images flashed. Ruth's foot pushing the bucket. Mark's laugh with Danielle. The word us over papers about a new place. The feeling of her savings slowly draining. Her fingers tightened. No, she whispered. It's not. Cartwright nodded, as if he had suspected. Then I'll give you simple advice, he said quietly. From now on, document everything. Write it down. Save copies. Record what you can, legally, and if you decide to leave, he slid a business card closer. I will represent you. You do not have to stay where you are not respected. Elena stared at the card, at her name written across legal documents worth more than she could imagine. Elena Turner, Elena Montgomery. Both of them were hers. She rose from her seat, still shaking, but not from fear. Something inside her felt awake, alive, different. Elena had no idea that with new power comes the truth, and the truth would not whisper this time. It would speak through recordings, through documents, and through her own voice. She stepped out of the office and walked back toward the house that thought she was powerless. The front door slammed behind Elena the moment she stepped inside, so loud it echoed through the hallway like a warning shot. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from something sharper, something new, something rising inside her like heat. For the first time in years, she didn't call out for Mark. She didn't ask where he was. She didn't search the rooms to see if Ruth needed anything. She moved with purpose, quiet, controlled, determined. Power changes people, but it didn't harden Elena. It awakened her. Cartwright's words replayed in her mind. Document everything. She went straight to the bedroom, opened the nightstand, and took out a small black recorder she once bought to practice speeches for work. Back before Mark convinced her to quit, she turned it on. A soft red light glowed. Next, she went to the living room and placed it behind a stack of books on the shelf. Another went behind the curtain in the dining room. A third inside the hallway cabinet. Her hands shook, but not from fear, from certainty. She returned to the bedroom and opened the shared laptop. The screen lit her face as she typed in the password Mark never bothered to change. Bank accounts loaded first. Her heart dropped. Her savings she had kept from before marriage, were lower, much lower. She scrolled through the activity. Transfers, withdrawals, payments marked under Mark's name. He had taken from her, quietly, secretly, repeatedly. A sharp pain hit her chest, but she forced herself to keep going. She took screenshots, saved statements, copied every detail into a folder with a simple name, Cartwright. She checked messages, emails, voice memos, anything that could help her understand what Mark was planning. And then, she heard voices through the open window, soft at first, then close, then unmistakable. She froze. Mark, Danielle. They were in the backyard. Elena moved toward the window slowly, each step heavy, careful, silent. She slipped outside through the side door and crouched behind the garden wall, heart pounding so loudly she feared they might hear it. Mark stood near the old wooden fence, back turned. Danielle pressed against him, arms around his neck, head resting on his shoulder. Elena's breath caught. They weren't hiding anymore. They weren't pretending. Danielle whispered softly, voice dripping with confidence. Once your mom signs the house over, we're kicking Elena out. She's in the way now. Mark didn't protest. He didn't hesitate. He didn't defend his wife. He simply said, I know, soon. I just need her to keep things running here until everything is signed. Then he leaned down and kissed Danielle. Not a quick kiss. Not a guilty kiss. A long one. Deep. Intentional. Elena's fingers shook, but she lifted her phone slowly, very slowly, and pressed record. She captured the whisper. She captured the kiss. She captured every betrayal in clear sound. Her eyes stayed dry. Her face stayed calm. Because now she wasn't a wife begging for love. She was a woman gathering evidence. A woman who finally understood the truth. This was the moment Elena's heart stopped pleading and started planning. She slipped back into the house unnoticed, her phone still recording in her hand. In the bedroom, she transferred the audio to her laptop, saved it in the same Cartwright folder, and backed it up to an external drive she hadn't used in years. For the first time, she was protecting herself. She looked at the lawyer's card on the nightstand. Soon, she whispered. Tomorrow she would make her move. But for now, one quiet thought rose inside her like a new flame. Mark had no idea what she had inherited, and no idea she was done being silent. Elena locked her phone screen, the recording safe. A single knock suddenly sounded at the front door. Precise, official, powerful. The kind of knock that came with documents, not guess. And Elena knew the next step of her plan was about to begin. The knock hit the front door like thunder, not a gentle tap, not a casual sound. A firm, commanding strike that shook the quiet morning and made every fork on the breakfast table vibrate. Ruth looked up sharply. Mark froze with a spoon halfway to his mouth. And Elena already knew who it was. They had filed the day before. She had met with Cartwright again. She had signed her name on the petition. She had handed over the recordings and screenshots. Now this was the part Mark couldn't control. She rose from her seat slowly, too calmly, and walked out of the kitchen before either of them could ask anything. Her steps were steady, her face serene, her eyes unreadable. The woman who once trembled at every raised voice now walked toward the door without fear. Elena opened it. Standing there was attorney Douglas Cartwright, the man handling her inheritance, now also representing her as she stepped out of her marriage. He held a thick folder in his hand, papers neatly arranged, expression firm but respectful. Elena, he said with a small nod. She stepped aside. Come in. Mark's eyebrows drew together when he saw the unfamiliar man step into the dining room. Who's this? He demanded. Ruth eyed the lawyer with instant suspicion. What is going on? Elena remained silent. She let the air build, let the tension grow, let the truth walk in on its own feet. Douglas approached the table with calm authority. Good morning. I'm attorney Douglas Cartwright. I'm here on behalf of my client, Mrs. Elena Turner. Mark scoffed. Client? Elena doesn't need a lawyer. She does, Douglas replied, opening the folder. And that is why I'm here. He placed a stack of papers in front of Mark. Mark stared down at the heading. Petition for dissolution of marriage and request for immediate separation. His face drained of color. What? What is this? He stammered. Ruth's eyes widened in shock. Divorce? Elena, what nonsense is this? What did you do? Elena said nothing, not a word. She simply took the seat across from Mark and looked at him with a calmness that scared him more than anger ever could. Mark slammed his hand on the table. You're not divorcing me. Are you crazy? After everything I've done for you? Douglas placed another document on the table. No, he said evenly. You are the one who will explain this. He pressed play on a small recorder. Ruth's voice filled the dining room. Scrub the floors, girl. On your knees. If you want to stay in this family, earn your place. Mark went rigid. Ruth gasped. Elena's eyes didn't move from Mark's face. And here, Douglas continued, placing printed pages on the table, are screenshots of unauthorized financial transfers from Mrs. Turner's personal savings account. Transfers you initiated, Mr. Turner, repeatedly. Mark opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Then the back door creaked open. All three heads snapped toward the sound. Danielle stepped inside wearing a fitted blouse, her lipstick smudged, hair slightly messy. It was clear she hadn't come from her own home. She froze. Ruth stood up so fast her chair scraped violently across the floor. Who is she? Ruth shrieked. Danielle swallowed hard. Her eyes darted from Ruth to Mark, to Elena, to the lawyer. Mark, she whispered, voice shaking. You said she would be gone by now. A silence spread so thick it felt alive. Elena didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't move. Mark pushed his chair back, voice cracking. Danielle, what are you doing here? Douglas stepped toward the back door, blocking Danielle's path. You might want to stay, he said firmly. Your voice appears in some of the recordings. The court may want to hear from you, as a witness at the very least. Danielle's mouth fell open. What? Recordings? Of what? Douglas pressed play again. Her own words exploded into the room. Once your mom signs a house over, we're kicking Elena out. She's in the way now. Danielle's face turned pale. That was taken out of context. Ruth stared at her son with disgust. Mark, what have you done? Mark grabbed the divorce papers with shaking hands. Elena, this is insane. You can't do this. Where will you go? How will you survive? You have nothing without me. Elena finally spoke. Her voice was soft, steady, unbreaking. That's not your concern anymore. Her calmness broke him, completely. Mark collapsed into his chair, face crumbling, chest heaving. He had underestimated her. He had underestimated everything, especially the one thing he didn't know. Elena now had $300 million behind her, but she didn't tell him that. Not yet. And as Mark sat there drowning in his own betrayal, Elena knew the next step wouldn't be served in this house. It would be delivered in a courtroom. A notification buzzed softly on Douglas's phone, a reminder of the hearing date he had already filed for. A court date, closer than Mark could imagine. The judge's gavel slammed against the wooden block like a gunshot. The sound cracked through the courtroom, sharp, commanding, final. Court is now in session. This was the first hearing on the divorce. Evidence, motions, temporary orders. Elena did not move. Her face remained calm, almost still, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Her lawyer, attorney Douglas Cartwright, stood beside her. Ready, prepared, steady. On the opposite side of the room, Mark sat stiffly, jaw clenched, eyes darting between Elena and the judge as if hoping anyone would save him. Beside him was Danielle, wearing a long coat and sunglasses she didn't bother removing. She shifted nervously in her seat, clearly regretting ever being part of this nightmare. The truth always waits, and when it arrives, it does not knock softly. The judge looked up. We are here to address the petition for dissolution of marriage between Elena Turner and Mark Turner, along with all accompanying evidence and requests. Mark jumped to his feet immediately. Your Honor, I need to speak first, he blurted out. My wife, Elena, she's unstable. She's acting out of emotion. She was manipulated by this lawyer. Sit down, Mr. Turner, the judge snapped. Mark froze and slowly sank back into his seat, cheeks flushing with embarrassment. Douglas stepped forward. Your Honor, we would like to begin by presenting evidence. A series of recordings, documents, and messages showing emotional abuse, infidelity, and financial misconduct. The judge nodded. Proceed. Douglas pressed play on a recorder. Ruth's voice filled the courtroom. Scrub the floors, girl. On your knees. If you want to stay in this family, earn your place. Gasps rippled across the room. Ruth covered her mouth with her hand where she sat in the second row behind Mark. Tears welled in her eyes. She looked smaller than she ever had before, older, fragile, completely shattered by her own words thrown back at her in public. Mark shifted uncomfortably. Douglas pressed another button. Mark's voice came next. Mom, she's not working. She might as well clean. She's not bringing anything else to the table. More murmurs spread. Elena sat still. The judge watched carefully. Then Douglas approached with printed documents. These are the unauthorized financial transfers made by Mr. Turner from Mrs. Turner's personal savings account. Mark's eyes widened. That money was for us, for our future. Douglas replied calmly, No, you rerouted it into a private account, one that your wife was not aware of. She signed no authorization. She filed a report with law enforcement last week. Investigators are already reviewing it. Mark swallowed hard. Danielle looked at him with disgust. You said it was a temporary move, Douglas continued without pausing. He played the next recording. Danielle's voice echoed through the room. Once your mom signs the house over, we're kicking Elena out. She's in the way now. A loud gasp burst from the gallery. Danielle's face drained. That was taken out of context. The judge raised an eyebrow. Context? You were discussing removing his wife from her own home? Danielle stammered. I was manipulated. He made me say it. I didn't mean... Mark snapped. Oh, shut up, Danielle. You were part of this. Their argument erupted in front of everyone. Raw, chaotic, unfiltered. The judge banged the gavel. Enough! Silence fell. Elena didn't look at either of them. She didn't need to. Everything was already out in the open. Douglas placed the final file on the judge's bench. Your Honor, all evidence has been provided. Emotional abuse, financial theft, infidelity, and a clear plan to remove Mrs. Turner from her home. The judge looked at Elena. Mrs. Turner, do you wish to request spousal support? Elena shook her head softly. No, Your Honor. I want my freedom. The judge paused, then nodded with respect. Very well. He picked up his pen, signed the document, and spoke the words that collapsed Mark's entire world. Divorce granted. Given the evidence of misconduct and dissipation of assets, all remaining marital property is awarded to Mrs. Elena Turner. Mr. Turner, this court finds you are not entitled to any share. Mark's legs buckled. He dropped into his seat, color draining from his face. Danielle tried to slip out quietly, head low. Not so fast, the bailiff said, stepping forward. The judge cleared his throat. In addition, this court acknowledges the ongoing investigation into the illegal transfers from Mrs. Turner's personal account. Law enforcement has provided this court with a warrant for Mr. Turner's arrest on charges of theft. Officers, you may proceed. Two officers approached Mark. Danielle gasped, covering her mouth. Mark! Mark shoved his chair back, panic in his eyes. Elena, please, do something. Tell them I'm not a criminal. Please. Elena did not respond. Not with words, not with emotion, not with anything. The officers cuffed Mark and escorted him out of the courtroom as he begged, cried, and screamed her name. Danielle stood frozen, trembling. Ruth sobbed quietly behind her hands. Elena rose from her seat. She didn't look back. Justice had arrived, but Elena did not know. The final twist was waiting for her outside those courtroom doors. The glass door of the courthouse slid shut as Mark stumbled outside, hands still shaking from the cold bite of handcuffs. He had just been released on bail pending the next steps in his case. His eyes were red, his breath sharp, his steps uneven. But the moment he stepped onto the steps, another shock hit him. A sharp slap cracked across his face. Danielle stood in front of him, finger trembling with rage, lipstick smeared, eyes wild. You promised me a house, she screamed. You said your mother would sign everything over. You told me we'd move in together. Mark staggered backward, stunned. Danielle, listen, just give me time. Time, she spat. You have nothing. The judge said you have nothing. She shoved him hard. You used me, she snapped, voice shaking. And the worst part? You weren't even smart about it. Mark reached for her, desperate. Danielle, don't do this. Don't touch me, she barked, stepping away as a sleek black car rolled up beside the curb. The back door opened. Another man, dressed sharp, confident, clearly wealthy, leaned out. Danielle didn't hesitate. She walked straight to the car, slid inside, and slammed the door without looking back. The man gave Mark a wicked smirk. The car sped away. Mark was left alone on the courthouse steps, breathing hard, eyes filling with the crushing truth. Danielle didn't love him. Danielle didn't care. Danielle only wanted the house, the money, the future he could never give her. And now he had lost everything trying to keep her. The betrayal he built with lies returned to drown him. Later that day, Mark dragged himself home, his clothes wrinkled, his eyes swollen, his life broken. When he walked into the house, he found Ruth in the middle of the living room, stuffing clothes into suitcases. Mom, he whispered, what are you doing? Ruth didn't look at him, not once. Her voice was small, smaller than he had ever heard. We have to go, Mark. Go. Go where? What's happening? She held out a letter to him with trembling hands, a formal notice. Notice of change of ownership and termination of tenancy. New owner, Elena Turner, Montgomery. Mark snatched it and scanned the lines. His throat closed. Elena, bought this place? He whispered. Ruth nodded weakly. And the bank says she didn't just buy the mortgage. She bought the whole block of properties tied to it. We have 30 days to leave. Mark sank onto the couch, head in his hands. He couldn't speak. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't understand how the woman he treated like a servant was now powerful enough to buy the roof over their heads. Ruth wiped her tears and whispered, You've ruined us. Mark didn't argue, because deep inside, he knew it was true. Outside, the wind picked up, soft, cool, steady. A different scene unfolded miles away. Elena stood on a wide open field, her grandfather's land, the land she once believed was worthless. The sun lit her face gently as she stood at the highest point of the property, hair blowing behind her, eyes calm. No anger, no bitterness, just peace. Elena never wanted revenge. She only wanted love. But when the world handed her power, she chose something better. She chose justice. She closed her eyes. She breathed deeply. She let the world settle. No Mark, no Ruth, no Danielle, no cruelty, no chains, only freedom, only truth, only the legacy her grandfather always knew she deserved. The wind rustled through the tall grass as she stepped forward, steady and confident, ready to build a life rooted in respect and strength, not fear. Behind her, the sun dipped lower, painting the world in gold. Her new beginning had already started, and her old life was already fading into silence. I hope you enjoyed watching this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share, and comment on the lessons you've learned, and let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. See you in my next video.